Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and an A to Z full tutorial on block lettering. My starting point for sketching out block letters begins with a 3x3 dot square. This gives me 3 vertical spaces to divide up each part of the letter. So for an A, the right hand column becomes the trunk, which leaves the first and the second columns to carve out the real curve of the A. For the letter B, I'm doing exactly the same. This time the trunk will be on the left hand side and I'm going to make it 4 dot spaces high because it's one of the taller letters in the alphabet. I always start out sketching the outside curve of any letter, and then once I've got that shape I just do exactly the same but a little smaller for the middle. To create a C, I just draw a circle, put my inner circle in and then just cut off 1/4 on the right hand side to make it a C shape. The letter D is just a backwards B, or B is a backwards D, depends how you look at it, so they're the same principles, just flipped and reversed. The letter E. This letter is the bane of my block lettering existence. I do the same as I did with a C. I make a circle first, I then take the second 2 columns, I get a line diagonally across, and that carves out my small little curve to make an E. This one I do lots of little sketchy strokes because it takes a while for my brain to work out how to do an E, so I can't give you much more tips other than start with a circle and see how you get on. The letter F is another nice tall letter, but instead of going straight up, I'm going to use that full space to curve round to the middle column, and that's going to be the top part of my F, and then I can go in and add all the other little flourishes. Moving on to the letter G, again the same system is the 3 dot spaces, the right hand side becomes the trunk and then the left. I'm very much drawing an A, aren't I? That's what I'm drawing, draw an A, but then 2 squares down I put a nice big curve that spans that whole 3 spaces, so I've got a nice tail for the G. The letter H very much mimics the letter B, but instead of rounding it right back round to that trunk on the bottom, I'm going to cut it off and make it go right down to the last column at the bottom. For the likes of the letter I and J and L, they are only 1 dot space wide, so I've put in the 3 dot spacing column lines just to show you, but if you were going to do that in one big lettering, so you were going to have a H and an I, you don't need 2 dot spaces, you would only need 1. For the letter K, the left hand column becomes your trunk, that middle column becomes your diagonal lines to get up over to your third column. That goes for the top and the bottom. You've then got 1 dot space to fill over, and then vertically you just fill in a nice little arrow to join up the K. And then an L is one of those big long tall letters again, so it's 4 dot spaces high, but then I'm going to start in the middle column because I just want the last column to be a little bit of a flick for an L. Not a massive flick, I'm not going to go right round, just a tiny flick. Welcome to the Mammoth letter M. So I do start off with an M in the 3 dot spaces. I'm basically drawing an N, but I add on 2 extra dot spaces and I just replicate the last 2 columns of the first bit. So it's just 2 little extra humps and lines. I'm not sure an M has ever been described in that way before, but welcome to my channel. An O, just like we did the C and the E, but much simpler. We're just drawing 1 circle over that 3 dot spaces and a nice little one that goes in 1 dot space in the centre. P's and Q's, oh mind your language, are very much B's and D's, but just with the 4 square at the bottom. When it comes to doing that rounded curve of each letter, I usually find that I start just a little bit further down than what the trunk is, just to give a tiny little bit of definition. We have 3 dot spaces for the R, and I use the second and third columns to make a really big, it looks like a tap, doesn't it? A curve that goes from the second dot down all the way up. Moving on to the last leg of the alphabet and the second nemesis letter in my life, and that's the letter S. This one is very much just sketching out the diagonal shape of an S. I try to start just over from the centre at the top and then go just over from the centre on the other side at the bottom. I can't explain it any better, guys. An S is just one of them letters that is a git. For the T, we've got a nice tall 4 dot space letter. We've got the same tail that we put in on the L, but on the top row of our 3 square starting point, I'm going to put little juts to make that T crossbar. U, I consider an upside down H with no trunk, so we'll move on from that. V is very much about taking the 1 dot space on the left and the right hand column and bringing it down to the bottom 2 dots in the centre column. And then a W is exactly the same, except we're going to add another 2 dot spaces on. And instead of taking that middle point in the W up to the top, I'm going to bring it down 1 dot space so it sits more in the middle. As long as the top and the bottom points of your W are 1 dot space wide, it should start to look okay. I've got to thicken up the one on the right hand side because clearly it's a lot smaller. And the next is a first for me, as I've never actually had to draw one in my entire 3 years journaling. But I would say put a cross in on your 3 dot square grid, and you're going to have on that left hand column, you're going to go from that top dot in slightly towards the middle column and back out again, and do the reverse on the opposite side. And then on your middle column, those little indents that are going to go up and down are going to be much smaller. They're only going to go down to the first dot space, to the second row. And then finally, a Y is the beginnings of a U, but I'm going to put that tail of a G in there. So I'm going to go down 2 dot spaces. And then for a Z, I'm going to put in my 3 dot space lines. And the first column going across is going to be the top part of Z. The last column is going to be the bottom. And then I'm going to join them up diagonally. As I was drawing this, I did prefer the look of keeping a more blunter end. So rather than a point at the bottom and the top, I've made them a little bit more squarer, and I think that fits in better. Okay guys, so I've outlined it all now, and I've done a couple of extra little shapes just to show you how you can switch up the letter style just by changing some of the column widths. So I'm outlining this one how I've done the rest of the letters. It's just keeping it very standard, very uniform, everything being 1 dot space wide, keeping my rounded edges I don't want too much of a crisp line. But what I can do for another version is that the upstrokes I make thinner. So on this end, the left hand column and the right hand column are both 1 dot space wide, but that middle column, that upstroke for the end, I've made nice and thin and gave it a little flick at the end. Another way of turning block lettering into something slightly different is to bow the lines. For this end, I've bowed all of my vertical lines out a little bit. So I'm going to make that middle column trunk a little bit smaller as well, so still keeping it quite cursive. But all the lines are just a little bit bent. And then finally, I'm channeling a bit of Times New Roman. I'm going to add on all of those little flourishes. Oh, someone did tell me what they were called and I've completely forgot. The best tip I can give you for this, if you want to add the little extra bits, somebody's going to tell me in the comments what they are. Get onto Google, put in Times New Roman, get onto Word, put in the word that you want, and then it will show you where to put all of these little bits. And that's it for this video, guys. I hope you've stuck with me through to the end and that you're now feeling a little bit more confident to do some block lettering in your journal. I hope you liked it and found it mildly helpful. If you did, then give me a like, and if you're not already subscribed, please consider doing so and pressing that button for more videos, journaling, stationery tutorials, and all things in between.